so thank you very much for coming to our Legislator Scorecard webinar about holding your State House accountable. So we are going to be presenting your host today. So I am Karen. Great to have you here. And Michael, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, Michael O'Brien. I'm the founder of Mob Advocacy, and I've been working with Karen and BillTrack50 since it was in beta 12, 13 or so years ago.
True story. And you don't look any different. All right, so off we go to talk about scorecards. Oh, and I went the wrong way. Here we go. Forward. Here was what we're going to cover today. So first, we'll just talk about scorecards, what scorecards are, show you some examples, and talk about, who uses them and how. And then we will dive into actually making a scorecard. And so we will walk through it completely, creating a scorecard from scratch. And then we are going to look at some advanced tools. So how to tweak your scorecard to really get it to show exactly what you want it to show. But the making the scorecard hopefully will be showing you that it's pretty straightforward, and encourage you to give it a try. And to that end, let me go ahead and launch our little poll that we've got. So I'm going to throw this up here just so that we know who's here and how we should target this. So if you could answer this little poll real quick, that would be great. Okay, so this is a few more expert than we usually have had. All right, so pat yourselves on the back. You guys, you're awesome. So I'll go ahead and share this for a second. All right, so thank you very much for taking the poll, and off we go. And forward, everybody. Okay, Michael, are you ready?
I'm ready.
You feel like maybe
not sure if you are, but you're ready.
Okay, so first about scorecards. So let's just all get on the same page what we're talking about. So a scorecard is a summary of how legislators voted, maybe with some other things thrown in, and they can be presented in any manner, often just in Excel or a PDF with just like legislators' names and their grades. Here are some examples on the screen. So we've got this, we could have a gallery with different faces and their scores. We could have like a table and some bar charts. We could even do a heat map if we wanted. So Michael, in your opinion, what is a scorecard?
To me, a scorecard is the most powerful advocacy tool in your toolkit. You can use it during session to pressure legislators to vote the way that you want them to vote. You use it after session to promote your issues and how the legislature voted with your stakeholders. It's a tool for advocacy. It's a tool for get out the vote. It's got a lot of different uses, and it's a very powerful advocacy tool.
Very good. And if you don't have an advocacy toolbox, what are you doing? All right, so let's look at a few examples to give you just some interactive examples to help us see exactly how this is supposed to work. So the first one I want to show is the North Dakota State Chamber, and they have their page where they show how the legislators voted. So they put this up after session to show which legislators were supportive of their presumably business-oriented agenda. And so they've embedded the scorecard right on their site. And so this is an example of the kind with a bar chart. And so you can come in here and you can sort by district if you know your district, or by legislator to find your person, or what have you. They also have broken it into categories. So if I'm coming in here and my biggest concern is workforce, I can pick workforce and it'll recalculate and show people. And so I can see who's best and worst at workforce issues. So then there's a few other displays. So I can see how the parties broke out. And again, I can do that for just my topic and see like who voted best and worst for the different bills that counted as workforce bills. Or I can look at a map and I can look at, say, the Senate districts and see which were most and least supportive of the agenda. And again, I could do it for my particular topic that I care about. So that's just a nice way to display like who's voting the way you want them to. So that is one example. We also have, let me show you this one. So this is the Gallery of Faces example. And so this is a more education oriented, put together by Tennessee's Success Card. And I'm sorry, my internet just got real slow. But anyway, here we go. So here is, they are a PAC. And so they are trying to share with their members how different legislators voted and maybe why they chose to support them. And I am just not loading up very quick at all. Here we go. So they've got an explanation of what's going on. They've got some extra comments down the side to explain, and then they've got all the different people. And what's nice about this one is I can put in my address and it'll show just my legislators. I can filter and look at everything, but I can also click on an individual legislator and see how they voted, which you actually could do with the other one. I just didn't do it. And this is great because it'll show me their lifetime score and then their score this year. And then I can look at previous years. So if I would like to do a sort of a longer scorecard and look at a span of time, then that is something you can do with a scorecard and show trends. All right, so those are two examples of scorecards. Michael, anything I failed to highlight?
No, I love that one of these examples is a PAC, because as a former PAC director, being able to show your donors and your members why you're contributing to certain members, I think it's a great tool for that. The other piece, because the votes page on the legislator is based on the bills that you actually care about, it's a great tool for fly-ins. So you can print it out and then include it in your booklet to your supporters. So when they're going into those offices, they know exactly how that legislator voted on their issues.
Very good. Where to say thank you and where you might ask for some improvement or reach out to explain. Very good. Yes. Thank you, Michael. All right. So that is what a scorecard looks like. Hopefully that's what you had in mind when you came today to make something along these lines. All righty. So let's go ahead and talk about who uses scorecards. Specifically, if you are a business, great, do what you're going to do. If you are an organization that is a nonprofit, you have nonprofit status, then if you are a C4 organization organized for political ends, then you can make scorecards and do what you want. If you are a C3 organization, then you are not supposed to do electioneering. And so a scorecard could arguably be considered electioneering. So we have a great resource here with lots of advice about what counts and what doesn't, and how to stay on the right side of that. Of course, I would not discourage you from reaching out to your own counsel to make sure that what you're doing is fair game. But Michael, what are your rules of thumb for what a C3 can do as far as a scorecard goes?
Sure. So, when you're C3 versus C4, you're thinking issues versus people. And so while a scorecard in and of itself is educational and informational, so theoretically it should be able to be used by C3s. It's all in how you end up using it. So if you're using it to show how people voted on your issue, that's totally acceptable. If you're then kind of flipping it around and saying vote for Senator Smith because he voted for whatever AI bill we supported, that's when you're moving into people versus issues. And so stick to the educational side, stick to the issue side. And as a C3, you should be safe. But I always caveat that by, I'm not a lawyer. They do let me write law, but they don't let me practice.
Michael. Right. So it is a scorecard can just be presenting facts, and facts are fair game. So it's how you present it and spin it. So if you feel like you're maybe getting close to the line, definitely get some advice. All right. So we talked about some reasons why you might want to use a scorecard. You might be a PAC and you want to inform your members why you have supported certain individuals. You might be looking for a legislative champion to give an award at the end of the year. Maybe you would like to find somebody who has been supportive of your kinds of issues in the past so that you can reach out to them with your idea for a new bill that you think should be introduced. Michael mentioned fly-in support. So if you are flying, DC or to your stay house, it's a great, that little page I showed you, you can print that guy out and take it to and have all that supporting information to give the people that are flying in great confidence when they're walking into somebody's office that they actually know what's going on, which just makes the meeting go much better. I have a few people who use it for Oppo research. So you can look, and if you're going to run for office, and we encourage you to do that, then you can look for places where you feel strongly about an issue. You can see where your opposition maybe has voted a little bit out of step with how you would vote. So it's just an easy way to kind of comb through votes on a bunch of bills and see where there's some standout items that you could possibly discuss with potential voters. Michael, any other things I missed?
No, just want to emphasize this is a year-round tool. As Karen mentioned, finding champions, pressuring and advocacy during session and post session, both the follow-up and, if you're doing opposition research or any other piece, this is really a year-round tool. People think about it mainly post session, but it can be used anytime.
Very much, right. And so if you're going to be pressuring legislators for how you want them to vote, then you might want to be very careful with your scorecard, score in a very consistent fashion, possibly make a rubric. You could even publish it and say, like, if the bill does this, 2 points. If the bill, costs $50,000, minus 1 point, like whatever. So you can put up your list of exactly how you're scoring and score it very consistently and build a lot of credibility. And if you get all of your members are calling the legislators based on that information, then you start to build up some influence. So that needs to happen during the session. If you would like to influence how they're going to vote, then you score it a certain way so they know that they'll get called if they vote the wrong way. We actually have a case study here that you can go check out for a group that's been very successful doing that. And they talk about how they did it. So how they actually get legislators to call them ahead of time to see what the bill is scored to make sure that all goes smoothly. And that's great. I'm very happy for them. All right. So as Michael was just talking about, you might want to do it during the session if you're trying to influence voting. You might want to do it after the session if you're just trying to help people decide how to vote in November or what have you. So if you're doing it during the session, it's a little bit more to keep up with because you've got to keep going in, adding new bills, looking at votes. If you just wait until the session's over, then that's a little bit easier because it's all there and you can just do it all in one go and then publish it. So it really depends on your purpose. All right, so that is the who, why, when of scorecards. And do remember that you can enter in your own questions if you're, considering your own situation. And Michael and I will try to chat about that. But moving on to the actual making of a scorecard. So I'm going to pause this for a second to see if anyone has any questions, to see if Michael wants to add anything about the general scorecard situation. Well, before we dive into the actual live demo.
I'm not seeing any questions, and I think we're hitting all the key points. So
okie dokie, in we go. Let's actually make one. All right, so first you've got to decide what your bills are going to be that you're going to rate. And that might be, are you going to do 1 year, several years? I showed you both a 1 year and a several year one. Are you going to do all the bills, just some of the bills, just a few topics like North Dakota did? That Tennessee one was just education. But I have seen people rate all the bills in the state. And maybe you want to narrow it by, like, are you supporting them or are you opposing them? Are you going to do the 5 best bills? Something like that. So you decide like how many bills and how you're going to choose them. Then you make your bill sheet and go find those bills. Or maybe you already just have, like, here's the 5 bills we're going to do. Great, that's fine too. I will make a bill sheet real quick, so you will see me do that. And then load the bills from the bill sheet onto the scorecard. And if you have added your position, boom, you've got a scorecard. It almost seems like magic, and I will show you that happen. Now, this little play button will remind you how to make a bill sheet and add the position column. So if you don't have a position column right now, this little video will help you get that added into your bill sheet. But let's go ahead and actually do it. Okay, so, oh, wait, sorry. One last thing about rating. So when you add a position, you can use our default score, or you can rate them and you can just say like +1 or -1 for good or bad. Or you can do, if you do a whole rubric, maybe you've got 8 points, maybe you've got 12 points. So it can be whatever the points are, as long as good bills get positive points and bad bills get negative points, then our scorecard will work for you. Also, you might want to get down into the weeds and rate individual votes. So if a vote is on an amendment, maybe you feel differently about the amendment than you do about the bill. Maybe you think the amendment would have made the bill better. And so you want to give that a positive score, even though you didn't like the bill. Or maybe the vote was to kill the bill. And if it was a bill you liked, then you would want to rate that vote differently. So you can get all the way down into the weeds, which we will show you. Michael, any advice on rating bills?
Just two things. Consistency is important. This is a mathematical formula, and consistency is important not only for the score itself, but for your reputation within the state house. If you're skewing bills to make certain people win, legislators are going to know that. And two, be careful of amendments. Amendments can be good or bad, and they can change bills, and we've all heard, we know from debate stages, how legislators were for bills before they were against them. And so just make sure you're following all the way through, and all of the votes, keep an eye on them.
Very good. And you're right that if you are publishing this, then consistency is nice for credibility. If you're just using it internally to try to figure out who supported you, or pick a champion, like you can go a little loosey-goosey on that. But yeah, if you're going to publish it, absolutely agree. Consistency is key. So kind of decide how you're going to come at it and try to do it consistently. All right.
Karen, we've got a question.
Oh,
Ed asks, how would you score legislators that introduce either positive or negative bills that don't get a vote in the full chamber?
very good question. So that certainly happens. And in some topic areas, you're just trying to get onto the agenda. And that is the struggle. The struggle is real. So we do also have an option to score sponsorship of a bill. So if somebody introduces a bill, you can give that points. And if somebody co-sponsors it, you can give that points. So you can at least show who is trying to move your issue forward, or who you can give negative points for people who are introducing bills that are really not helpful. Even if they don't get to the floor, you can point out that they have some terrible ideas. So you can score sponsorship points in addition to votes. Very good question, because that is.
And then Aaron asks, so can scorecards auto score based on position? If so, can that happen if you just manually add a bill to a scorecard instead of importing from a bill sheet?
No, so they do. If you put your position on the bill sheet, boom, we give it a score when you bring it in. If you didn't have it on a bill sheet, then you're going to have to enter your position onto the scorecard. But once you've done that, it's good to go. So it's pretty easy. So let me go ahead and dive in here and do that. So just mentioning this slide is you can share it, keep it to yourself, share it with your team, or as you saw, you can publish it right on your website, either embedded or as a link. You can put the link on social media or whatever. So once you've got them, you can share them around. Okay, here we go. Live demo. Okay, so BillTrack50, great. I am going to come in here to bill sheets, and I am going to say view all, so that I can make a new bill sheet. New sheet. Okay, so we have been doing AI because my slides are so crazy they make us think of AI, but maybe we could do robotics this time. What do you think, Michael?
You got it.
All right. So this is just the name for the bill sheet. So I'm going to go ahead and create that. All right. So then I need to pick my state. I'm just going to do all states and then put in my search terms. And so I'm going to say anything that says robotics, or what else do we think? We could throw artificial intelligence in there. What do we think? Driverless vehicles?
That would be one.
All right, so that sort of idea. So then if I save this, I'm going to actually just say, give me ones that at least had some sort of vote. I should have left out dead ones. Okay, so we see that we've got some, I want bills. Sorry, I'm going to do the query and I'm going to say, I only want bills and I don't want them if they're dead. And I don't want them if they're budget bills. See, that's what we get for winging it. Got to do the little iteration. All right, so here we've got a chunk of bills. Some of them might be interesting. So we've got AI working group and along with some autonomous vehicles and automated. Okay, I'm liking this. All right, so these California ones look interesting to me. So I already have a position column that I can fill in. And I will show you what to do if you don't, but let's go ahead and fill these in. So let's see. High risk, that sounds bad. I'm going to oppose the high risk. Autonomous vehicles, personally, I would rather have someone drive me around than have to drive. So I will support that. Drug safety, I mean, I guess safety is good. Mental health, everybody likes mental health. And then the working group, I don't like working, so I'm going to oppose that. All right, Michael, you want me to change any of these? You're good with my ratings?
Perfectly fine with your rating.
All right, so if you do not have a position column, all you need to do is come up here to the templates and edit your template, whichever one you're using, and then scroll down to find the position column and then just make sure it's checked. That's it. Save that. When you go back to your bill sheet, you'll have a position column. Easy peasy. Okay, so now I'm going to go to scorecards and I'm going to make a new scorecard. And if you do not have the option for scorecards, reach out to us after this and we would be happy to add that to your account so that you can play with them for the rest of the year. And we'll just give you a free trial of those for however long your subscription is going. All right, so I'm going to say I want to make a scorecard for California and I'm going to call it robots card. Great. And create that. Okay. So I can put a subtitle on it. I'll talk about all the rest of this stuff later. I can throw a logo on it if you happen to have logos on there. That's sort of computer looking. And then I've got this choice for what I want my source of bills to be. I can choose to just add individual bills. So I could just type in bill numbers or put my search right onto my scorecard, or I can load up the work I've already done. Obviously, I did the work I already did to use that work. So I'm going to say I want to do that robotics and add them. And that'll pull out the California bills from that sheet and add them to this California scorecard. All right, here's where I would add categories, and we'll get to all this fancy stuff later. But I'm just going to say save. Okay, so because I had put some ratings in, it went ahead and set up my bills, and it gave them these default scores. So the strong support was a 5, strong oppose was a -5, and then 3 for support and -3 for oppose. So that's the defaults, but I can come in here and I can modify those and fine tune them if I need to. But looking at my summary, here's the scores. They go from a 6 to a -5, possibly because we sort of randomly assigned them. So I can see who supported me and who opposed me, and boom, I've already got a scorecard that I can use. And that's all it took. So I can look at one of these people here. Let's check out Assembly Member Alanis. Voted yes on this bill that I really didn't like, so lost 5 points there, missed this vote altogether, and then got 5 points for this and 3 points for this. So overall, that was 3 points. Okay, so that is how that works out. I'm I can now go in. Let me show you how you fine tune this a little bit. So let's look at this one that I said was terrible. So I can look at this bill and I can give it the sponsor rating and the co-sponsor rating, which we just mentioned a second ago. So I could say, actually, this is a bad bill, -2 points to the people who wrote it and -1 point to the people who co-signed it. And then I'll save that. And then for the bill I really liked about safety, I'm going to say that was a great bill. And it's going to be whatever, 3 extra points for the person who wrote it. And nobody co-sponsored it, so we'll leave it alone. All right. So that just puts a little bit of extra credit in there. And so now if I look at this, it's just slightly different. So you see right away who wrote that bill that we liked. Okay, so that is the basics. We will get into the fine tuning next. But any basic things you'd like me to highlight before we move on to the advanced topics, Michael?
Just kind of building on Aaron's question, if you are filling in your position as you're going through session, you can click the add bills and it'll just add new bills. And so you it is designed to import only the new bills. And so it's not gonna hurt you to keep up your bill sheet during session and then continue to update your scorecard.
Yes, good point. So when I loaded those bills, it put in only the bills it didn't have yet. We were doing it fresh, so it didn't have any bills. But if a month goes by and California introduces another bill, we can go in and rate it and then import again. Or I could just use on the legislation tab, there's this add bill button. So I can just type in that I want whatever AB 303 and just add that bill to my card. So I can also do that, or I could search for a topic and find those bills and add that in too, right? So yeah, you can modify it on the go. And when it adds it, it simply comes in with a 0 score because we don't know what you think yet. So then you can come in here and just say, yeah, point, done. Okay, so that's it. That's making a scorecard. That felt fantastic and refreshing, and you're excited to try it yourself. But let's go back to the slides and talk about what some of these advanced topics are that I kind of skirted over. Actually, since we're here, let's go ahead and look at one of the votes. All right, so this new drone one that I just picked. We've got down here, these are the individual votes. So now we're going to get into kind of the technical of how this actually works. It's not that complicated, but what we'll do is we'll take the last thing that happened in the chamber, and that's what we will use as the score. So the House did all these things here, and then the third reading, and in May, that gets a calculator because that's what's actually getting added in. And then the Senate passed it out of this committee, and it's sitting here in this, or it passed it out of this committee in July, just a few days ago. So then that one is the most recent one. So that's what's getting added in. Now, if you don't want to include that, if you don't want to include a committee vote, you can just exclude that and say, we're not going to have any votes from the Senate yet. Excuse me. But if you want to include it, you can say, you know what, include both the committee votes. And this is where you could say, like, this specific, like, this is the amended version. Like, maybe the amended version isn't as good, and I want to give that one a different score. So when I say include, that gives me the choice to override the score and say, actually, the amended version wasn't as good, and I'm going to score this a -1. So you can come in here and really fine tune, include as many of the votes as you want, leave, include amendment votes, include committee votes, leave them out, whatever makes sense to you. By default, we take the last thing that happened in both chambers. And if the bill passed, then, it had a final vote in both chambers. So that's the votes you'll get. So that's reasonable default behavior. So you don't have to get into these weeds unless you really do have like a specific, if you really want to get into the weeds. Michael, when is it important to go ahead and look at the individual votes?
Yeah, I mean, amendments are important. We touched on, kind of supporting the bill before you oppose it. And Patsy actually brought up a great point. If you do find yourself in that position of supporting a bill before you oppose it and change it in the bill sheet, that's not going to automatically translate into your scorecard. You've got to, I'm guessing if you hit add bill, it will change it,
Uh,
or do
no,
you have to manually change it
you have to
here as
manually
well?
change it. So that's a very, very good point. So the bill sheet is not connected to the scorecard. In fact, you could load several bill sheets into one scorecard and throw in 3 extra bills. Like this, the scorecard is whatever list of bills you put on there, or you can manually add them. So they're not connected. So if you change a position in the bill sheet, that will not update the scorecard. You'll have to go to the scorecard and change the score. Or if you didn't like it at first, but then you did like it later, you can do that by using this include and say when you started liking or when you stopped liking it. So if you change how you feel about a bill completely or at a point in time, then you'll need to go to your scorecard, edit the bill, and then change the score. Changing the bill sheet won't change anything, which is a great point. Okay, so that is how you do the scoring for a bill and also how you do the scoring for the votes if you want to take it a little further. But hey, let's see how much further can we go. Advanced tools. All right, so you already saw what categories look like when we looked at that North Dakota card, and I was like, hey, I care about workforce. So that is a great feature, pretty easy to use, but I would still call it advanced. Comments, so that you can explain yourself. And I want to show you exactly how the comments work. And then the different scoring options. All right, let's dive in. Well, actually, any questions about the actual making of a scorecard before we move on? That basic process of load up some bills, either by typing them in or by putting in a bill sheet. You're done, or you can fine tune it a little bit. Does that all feel good and comfortable with everybody? Okay.
Yeah, I think we're good.
And feel free to ask questions at the end too. All right, so categories. So my category hand, categories.
Stephanie, yes, this recording will be available and the slides will be sent to you as well.
Yes, yes, yes. Very good. You will get the slides, you will get this, and you get the scorecard guide, all of the details, everything we did today and more. So yes, we will email you tomorrow, everything you need. And these slides have links. So for example, this allow people to focus on a topic. This will explain how to go make categories. So if you click that, it's got a little video of me like making categories and for 2 minutes. So categories, we will get into that. Oh, and one comment, categories could be a year. So you could make a multi-year scorecard and then put in the year of the bill as a category. And a bill can have more than one category. So you could do both workforce and what year it is. But then people can look how things have changed over the years. So that's just an option. Okay, comments. So you might want to explain why you rated a bill, how you rated it. And so we give you room to do that. And you might want to explain why you rated a vote differently. And so we give you room to do that. And what's important to know is that if you rate a vote, then that's the comment we will show. If you don't rate the vote, then we will show the main comment for the bill. I'll try to make that more clear with an example. Okay, and then the scoring options. This is tricky stuff. So I will do this with the scorecard up, but we had 2 different columns up there. We had the index and the total score. I will show you those. I will sort those and I will explain where those come from. But you can highlight one or the other by the settings on the card. you can also decide if you want to include votes for legislators that didn't vote on that bill. You can choose to punish that, or you can choose to let that alone. I will give you those options too. So we've got an in-depth post here about how to do that when they're absent or abstain from a vote and how to manage that. And we've got an in-depth thing about the index versus the total score, which includes all the formulas for exactly how we calculate this and what the impact of the different choices are. So we will cover the scoring options in a little bit of depth. All righty. In we go back to our scorecard. All right, so let us start with robot card. Great. So let's talk about the categories first, and then we'll do comments, and then we'll do the scoring. So the categories you set up here. And so we actually threw a bunch of different things on here. So we have actual robots. So that's one thing. So I type in my category, hit enter. I could add 2 words before I hit enter, and that'll make that a category. And then I did the drone search and I added those in. So I can just keep adding categories. I can come back and add categories later. I can remove any of these categories that turn out don't work for me, but that's all it takes to make a category. Okay. And then all we need to do is assign them. So I could say this decision system, I'm gonna say that that is a robot, and maybe it's artificial intelligence as well. And autonomous vehicles, I didn't give that a category, but let's just call that drones. This one was the one that actually came up for drones, so we'll do that. Oops. Anyway, you get the idea. And so now all of my columns, I've got the category, new column showed up here to show the categories. And this new choice showed up here to narrow by any of the categories. So now I could say, well, that's great, but what I really care about is drones. And it'll recalculate the score for that, or I could recalculate the score for just that one bill that I said was an AI bill, which apparently everybody voted against. All right, so that's how you make categories. And I'm doing different topics. I mentioned years. Michael, do you have any other ideas for sorts of categories that people can use?
I mean, it depends on your issue, I guess. I can't think of anything off the top of my head though.
Karen wins the Stump Michael contest. Very good.
Years and issues would be the key ones that I would look at.
Agreed, but maybe you can think of a creative way to do it yourself. So then comments. So in this
you could do urban rural and look at no, that would be more legislator than
legislation.
Bill.
Oh, swing and a miss. Okay, so we'll move on to comments. I've got a column here that the comments show up in, which I'm going to go ahead and take advantage of. So here I can say high risk automated decision. Okay, so this is you wouldn't believe how dangerous these sorting robots are. All right, so we just put in our comment. But then we can come down here and include this. And I'm going to say, okay, I really appreciate that they wanted to send it to the judiciary. So I'm going to give a point for that. And I'm going to put a little comment in here I thought that was worth a good positive point. Okay. So I put in my main comment here, and people can now see this. And if they're looking at a legislator, then they'll see that, he really shouldn't have voted yes because these are super dangerous. But now if I can manage this, didn't vote on it. Drat. I thought that I would get it in one. Oh, well. All right. So if they had voted on it, then the extra comment I wrote on the vote, so if they had voted on that specific vote that I gave the extra points to, then that comment would appear here instead of the main comment. So hopefully that makes sense. So if you do put a comment on a vote, it's going to override the comment on the main comment, because we assume it's more important because it's more detailed. One more thing I want to mention is you can also add a link to that. So if you have testimony you have submitted, or you have a blog post you have written, or if you have a web page that you've made a big call to action with what you want people to do, you can go ahead and put that link right in here. And so I'm going to say you should go to whatever, Wikipedia about conspiracy theories, and you should take action now. All right, so I'm going to save this just so you can see what that looks like. So you get your comment, and then you get the take action now, and it's actually a link, and people can go and do the thing that you're asking them to do, or read, or see your testimony. So comments can be as long, are about a tweet in length is what we allow in there. But if you have a lot to say, you can link off to a full entire, or a PDF for people to download, or whatever. Like, you can put in as much as you want by including that link. Okay, so categories, comments, now the scoring. Any questions before I move on? The scoring is the most complicated thing we'll talk about.
Nope.
All right, here comes the math. Okay, so this vote index and this total score are not exactly the same thing. So the vote index is the percentage of time they voted the correct way. So from 0% of the time to 100% of the time, who voted most the right way and the wrong way. And so if I sort by that, we see that some people never got a single vote right. If I sort the other way, we see the best we got was Senator Lyman, got it right 75% of the time. But yet you see she only had 3 points in the total score. So this is the percentage. It allows us to compare the senators and the assembly people on a, they're both from 0 to 100. It evens out if they're on the committees that got a chance to vote, all of that. So you just get the percentage. And so I kind of consider that ideological purity. So that's one way that you could score. There's also the total score. So this score includes not just how they voted, well, all of their votes, including any committee votes that you have included, all those extra votes. So that all adds up, plus any extra credit you gave them for sponsoring bills. So that shows up there as well. So this is more like, how much do they interact with your issue? Are they on the right committees? Are they sponsoring your bills? So that is, we consider sort of the impact score. So how much are they affecting your agenda? And you might be interested in one, and you might be interested in the other. Maybe you're interested in both. But one of those ideas is probably what you want to highlight. So when you are on this Manage tab, you get to decide, do you want to sort it by the total score, or do you want to sort it by that vote index? Do you want people, the first thing they see is to see the best, most pure people, or the best, most impactful people? Or maybe you want to show them the worst people at the top. You can do that too. Maybe you just want to sort them by their name so that people can find their own legislator. Or maybe you want to put the Republicans together and the Democrats together. So you have these different choices for how you want to sort it, to highlight your point. Likely you'll want to sort on score. And so then it's, which one do you want to emphasize? So let's go ahead and say we would like to emphasize the vote index. So Michael, when do you think vote index is more appropriate, and when would you use total score? Michael's not going to help me out with that.
My dog was making noise, so it it all depends on your organization and your issues and the votes. But generally speaking, um, I look more at the vote index score, the ideological purity score, than the number of votes. You know, you can see, um, because at the end of the day, that score is always going to include the floor votes. And floor votes are often more important than committee votes. So you want people to be there when it counts, and floor votes at the end of the day are when it counts.
Very good. So if you have an issue that they're not getting a lot of votes and it's really down to what they sponsor, like Ed was mentioning, that might be a great time to use the total score when the vote index isn't really going to work, because most of them are 0. All right. So another point I want to make about how the scores get calculated, you'll notice that the possible points were 6. So that is, if she had voted right every single time, then she would have got 6 points. She only got 3 points. So you might think, gosh, that should be 50%. I'm confused. Sure. But remember that the worst she could have got is -6. So if she had voted exactly right half the time and wrong half the time, then that would have been a 0, because they would have completely balanced out. So let's find one. So like Josh here voted right on a 3-point and wrong on a 3-point, balanced out to a 0. So it comes down to there's a formula, but it's, as you can see, she voted halfway above 0, halfway above 50%. So that's 75%. So that's pretty much how it works. So that is to scale it from the 0 to the 100, which is what people expected percentages to be, versus us showing people who made a positive impact on your issue versus people who made a negative impact on your issue. So that's why that is not completely intuitive. Those formulas are in the blog post if you want to see them. But yeah, this really is the percentage of the time that they voted the right way. And this is added up all your scores. So it just doesn't work out to be quite intuitive at the end. Okay, so then the last trickiest point is what to do about people who miss a vote. So by default, we'll just put that in as a 0. So this section down here, scoring sections, settings, we've got the include, absent, and abstain votes. So by default, we just put it in as a 0. So that means, let's just go back to the main page here. So that means even if she missed a vote, and she did, so she got 3 correct, and then she got 0 for this, so she wound up with a total of 3. So she could have got 6 though if she had been there the whole time, right? All right, so we're including absent and abstain votes, but counting them as 0. So that means we are including them in this possible score, but giving them 0 points. Because they didn't vote. So that means, yeah, so that's why she got 75%, because she missed a vote. But if I left those out, if I said, you know what, I don't want to count people's absences against them, do not include the absent and abstain votes, then in fact, she would only have been there for 1 vote, and she voted the right way that time, so she'd have 100%. So do you want to show up people, like, do you have an attendance problem in your state? Is that something you want to highlight? Do you want to include the votes they missed in the denominator of their score? If that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. So that is sort of counting against them a little bit, because they can't get 100% if they miss some votes. Okay. Then the other option, if you do want to include it, is instead of counting it as a 0, you could count it as more than 0. So I could say, you know what, if they missed a vote, and the bill passed on a bill that I really didn't want to pass, then they let me down by not being there to vote against it. So you can count it as partial points or even put 100% of the points in there. And what we'll do is we'll take the bill the way it passed. I'm sorry, the way it went. So if it passed, we'll consider that a positive. And if it failed, we'll consider that a negative. And then if you scored it as a positive bill, then they'll get 50% of the credit. They missed it, but it didn't matter. But if you thought it was a bad bill and it passed, then we will punish them by half of your score. So that by not being there to help you, you can punish them. All right, so I'm going to save that. So now I forget. All right, so we must have, let me look for her, see what her score turned into. So I'm going to use the filter and say, where did she go?
Karen, we've got a question.
Yep, let me finish
Matthew,
my thought and we'll do it.
okay.
All right, so here we punished her now half of that 3 for failing to show up. So now instead of getting 3 points, she got the 3, but she lost 1.5 points on the one she missed. So now her total score is down to 1.5. So that swung her all the way to a 62.5. So you could see that you could legitimately say she's at 100, 75, or 62.5. And that's all completely fair math. So it's how much do you want to emphasize them missing votes? Okay, end topic. Michael, questions?
Matt asks, Arizona has had a 20% turnover in our legislator in just this legislative session alone with resignations. That means we have many people who were appointed midway through session. Is that automatically taken into account, or do we have to manually remove those votes when they couldn't remove those votes they couldn't make from the denominator?
Okay, two answers to that. One, it automatically knows. So it's not counting votes that they couldn't have voted in. So if they weren't there yet, if they weren't in office yet, it doesn't count that against them. So their possible would be the lower number of how many votes they were actually in office for. So we're only counting against them votes that they could have taken. So that automatically gets taken care of. But another item is if somebody resigns early in the session, maybe they had 2 votes, then their score is going to look wacky, and maybe you don't even care about them anymore because they're gone. So then you have this other option down here, exclude out of office legislators. So if you want to, you could leave out all the people who didn't finish the session and not include them in your scorecard. Or maybe you want to leave them in. That's up to you. But there is that option to leave out people who didn't finish the session in office. But yeah, if they weren't there, then it doesn't go into their possible. The possible does know enough to know if they even could have voted. And by the same token, like if you're a senator, you can't vote in House votes. So like those don't count against you. So it's really, and if you're not on the committee, you couldn't have voted in the committee. So that doesn't count against you. So yeah, it's definitely only the votes that you had a legal opportunity to vote on. Hopefully that answers the question. Okay. So that absence stuff, again, sounds complicated, but you can play with it and see what kind of results you get and, if it helps you make your point. And you can read all the details on that post that I highlighted on the slides. And again, you'll get the slides tomorrow. All right. I'm going to open it up. Michael, anything that I missed and any other questions from the crowd?
Can't think of anything you missed. So that's good.
Very good. All right.
Happy to have more questions from the crowd, though.
All right. So I'm going to come back to our slides. And I am going to formally ask you with an angry robot face if you have any questions.
How do we share and publish scorecards? That's a good question.
Very good. Very good question.
That is a good question.
Okay, that's one more item on the Manage tab. So if you are in your account, obviously you can use it and do whatever you want. If you want to share them with other people in your account, then that is a Manage Users item, right? So that is the same as you could share a bill sheet with other people. You can share the scorecard with other people. And of course, we've got lots of help on that. So that is how you can share it within your team, but not publish it. If you want to make it available to the public, and we hope you do, it's great to inform people, then that's this last item on the Manage tab, make this scorecard public. So once I check that, I get 2 links. So this link has BillTrack50 header and footer on it and makes for a really pretty package to share on social media or whatever. This one does not have the BillTrack50 stuff on it. So this makes a good link to embed in your website. So this would be what you would want to embed. So like that North Dakota one, that was this link, just embed it as a frame or share everything around. And you can share either link in social media or in an email or in a newsletter or what have you. Either one of these links will work. Just look and see which one you like better. And this logo, this is so that you can put your logo on it so that when they click through that link, it'll still have your logo and nobody gets confused. So yes, so that's how you publish it. So just check that box and say save. And then if you realize you've got a terrible, terrible mistake in there, you can take it back down and then put it back up when you're ready. And these links will be the same. So you can turn it off at any time and then it won't work for a little while until you turn it back on. But that's how you share it. Great question. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. I think we're at time. So last slide is here's how you reach out to us. So my email address, Michael's email address. And if you like that gallery of faces, that is a third-party tool. You should reach out to Brianna and she can talk to you about that. It just attaches to your BillTrack50 scorecard and puts up that beautiful display with the faces. And thank you everybody for coming. I hope that you got something out of this. And I'm going to say goodbye. You want to say goodbye to the people, Michael?
Bye.
Bye, everybody.